Alright, welcome back to Regal Tails. And yeah, I'm gonna just start the video right here. Naja holds in her stead and breathes heavily. Her head began to spin as her unchecked emotions swept through her mind. They took my son! It finally dawns on her the emotional severity of her people's losses. The temptation to break down and cry right there and then was all too inviting. The feeling was fleeting though, with her volcanic rage dominating her resolve. She prowled through her group, pointing at each member in turn. Anger and remorse burned in her eyes. They took your masca. They snuffed out the joyous laughter of Riri. Of Riri from us. Lyra can never dream of home again. They used our children, our tribe's very future, as the stepping stones for their own meager life. They laugh. Never have I been insulted in all my life for the service I provide as a warrior. We Sharskarans are known far more than mere faceless grunts. Until today. The group stared out in shocked silence, feeling the weight of the words sink into their pelts. Naja choked up, tears beating down her muzzle and falling to the dirt beneath her feet. Her face was set ablaze with fury and despair. 5 years. For 5 fucking years we've fought their campaigns. Bloodied our blades, our claws, our fur, but still we're seen as just dogs of war to those highborn. Naja glared through glassy, reddened eyes to the direction of the fortress, lost over the hills now but burned in her memory. They sit on precious ivory, claiming glory and build their own foundations from our fallen, just so they can preserve their meaningless titles. Doing all that they can to ensure their bastard legacies. Naja turned to her tribe, snarling and spitting at the thought of the highborn. But I kinda get it, yes. We're pawns in a horrible game. They wish to craft the world in their image, build halls of false heroes, and march in parades to show off their glorious military might. I don't want a world built in their image. It's plenty ugly enough already, if you ask me. I'd soon desecrate every gold statue they erect before acknowledging their deeds. Everyone scoffed in disgust at the notion. And we are supposedly to accept this? Crawl on our hands and knees at the sight of their fancy clothes and titles? Because of their special blood? Naja took a stone from the ground and tossed it in the fortress's direction, watching it disappear into the night. I'll be damned if history gives them that pleasure. If anyone is going to be remembered from this war, it will be the men, women, and children that trudge through the sea of corpses, that reach for a better tomorrow. Those lords of the court, those pieces of shit, deserve to sink into oblivion. Not us. The warriors who stood with her roared up a storm with their infectious monologue. This war. It's nearly at its end. I can taste it in the air. Like a wounded beast, it's up to us to bag this prize. No kings, queens, or barons will claim it. In this everlasting warring war, am I correct? It's not warring. Warring nightmare will spirit through the fog of war and have the sun finally shine upon the glory of our clan's barbarous might. Their collective roars threaten to bring down the sky. Naja perched herself up on the rocky hillside. I'll hang by my neck before I allow us to be forgotten by the end of this war. We are Shaskaran. For every babe birth, a legend is created, for that is our right in life to claim. The hardship we face and battles won don't just define us to this day, but the future of our kin, our tribe, our legacy. A grotesque snarl curls at her maw before she spits in the direction of the fortress. For years they sat idly behind. I'm sorry about that. For years they sat idly behind their walls, bleeding away the hours of the day like with little regards how precious every second is. I say no more to waiting on them. No more shedding our own blood to such bastards who know not the lands nor its people that flourish within it. We are not guardians, not sellswords. not sell swords. We're hunters, the apex predators of these very lands. We do not sit and wait while our prey tread upon our hunting grounds. These fucking highborns lack the resolve to face their biggest quarry. But I do. The Emperor himself, Soler Valar. The war band began to chant and bash their weapons in uproar. They marveled at her as she pointed at the setting sun, eaten away by the night. The fool thinks he can sneak within our lands undetected. They clearly never been hunted by a Shaskaran before. We'll be the first to meet his finely groomed ass before anyone else does. I'll personally take his head myself and show those squabbling kingdoms just who we are. The ones who truly ran this war, who truly fueled their victories. We'll make history remember who were the true victors, for it was Shaskara, through and through. The group cheered in a massive roar for their chieftain, eagerly chanting her name. Who are we to this world? Are we pawns? The roaring troops yelled, No! We are warriors. We do not breed whelps and we do not suffer fools. We're the Shaskarans. The world will remember our names, that it was the grand tribe of Shaskara that conquered their empire. The fangs of war will snap shut, and it will be us who hold the Crimson Trophy. The militia of animal warriors burst out in savage roars to the heat of their leader's words, only to be snuffed out as Naja shouted to them again. It'll be a long march, and we leave at first light. Take your rest now. Tomorrow we strive for our birthrights. Naja watched as her tribe dismounted the horses and set to readying the camp. She spotted the vulture scout approaching her. Interesting. An interesting ordeal, am I correct? I think the plot twist here is she's gonna marry a king or an emperor. And then she's gonna have another son. And I can see this currently everything is fucked up, right? Some of the kings and vassals, the barons, the dukes are trying to get their claim of their fair share of land that's been presented to them. And instead of using their own troops, might as well use the extra manpower from a neighboring continent or land. The two intercept one another. Never mind, the two intercepts one another, pressing close enough to conspire their thoughts. Should I go and intercept our flyboy? Shouldn't take me long to reach the crash site. No, I have Zuta taking care of that. I need you elsewhere, Syndra. The mighty lioness clasped her massive paw around the vulture's shoulder, pulling her in closer. Closer. Closer! Syndra could feel Naya's sizzling fury still radiating off of her. How far have your scouts tracked him? They've been slowly building up their focus through the canal every night since we've spotted them. It's only a matter of time till they're on the move. Where they're at now, it'll be roughly a 3-week march out to them, Naja. Maybe 2 if the horses keep pace. Good. Naja made a move to leave before the vulture spread her wings to block her path. But my scouts tell me that this regiment is growing more terrifying by the day. They even smuggled in siege weapons. That reason alone is probably why they're advancing so slowly. You sure it's wise to leave the rest of the alliance in the dark on this? Urgh. And give them the satisfaction of saying they won the war? Pah! Naja gave Syndra a long, thoughtful look. Besides, it doesn't matter one way or another. From what I have planned, we'll be at the Emperor's throat before his army knows what hit him. And if they catch a wind of us, what then? Word on the winds has it that you're high on their hit list ever since you crashed one of their imperial banquets. A banquet. Oh yeah, correct. Yeah, I thought I was reading that incorrectly. Sorry. For all we know, all of that fancy gear they're porting over could be trained on Sharskara. We're the only true threat to the Empire. We're the only true threat to the Empire. If something happened to us, they might. Syndra choked on her words as Naja draped a comforting paw on her shoulder. The reassuring gaze she saw in her chieftain's eyes calmed the war within. But it is worrying though, it's true. Individually, they're pretty OP. But as an army? They can topple kingdoms, empires even. So there's a pretty big hit list, a big target on their back right now. Nothing's going to happen to our people. We've endured far worse than some Imperial's marching band. What are we? A tense sigh vents out of the vulture's nostrils, followed by a light chuckle. She creaked out a beaky smile and nodded in acknowledgement. Naja smiles along, patting her shoulder. She slowly looms down and leers down firmly into the bird's eyes, pressing a clawed index finger to her chest lightly. Just be sure it's us and only us who knows the Emperor's whereabouts. The vulture nodded and flew off to meet the other scouts, leaving Naja alone to oversee the encampment. Within the bustling motions of his tribe, setting up a camp, Zuta rendezvous. It's rendezvous with a miscreant trio of felines scouters, a lion, a tiger, and a cougar walking a bar. The cougar eagerly addresses Zuta with piqued interest. Orders, boss? Take Edrin and Cyrix and go check on our little avian speck. Night joining us, Zoots. I'll catch up in a bit. I need to check on a thing or two here. Don't carve too much into the bird. I want to identify them first. No promises, boss. The wolf rolled his eyes at the cheekiness from the cougar. A tired sigh whisked from him before placing a paw on Fekri's face and pushes him towards his horse. The trio snickers to one another before they mount their steeds and gallop away towards the crash. Zuta returns his attention back to the encampment. Everyone settled down once they started to feast on their replenished rations. He sniffs around to try and scout out Naja from the crowd. She wasn't in the camp, he realized. He scans the area and spots the massive lioness lounging off on a far-off decrepit tree branch, her attention solely anchored to the wasteland. An odd scraping noise crept to his ears as he trots up to the tree. He glanced up and reeled at the sight of scratch marks littering the tree's bark. He hollers up to Naja. Not joining us for dinner? Naja shakes her head dismally. Not hangry. Not hungry. The scratching noises resumed once more. Naja scraped her claws mindlessly into the bark, sprinkling the ground with wood shavings. I'm gonna stand guard for the night anyway. The wolf furrows his brow from hearing this. You haven't slept since the ride down here, though. Sure that's a good idea? Sure, I'm sure. Spite oozes out of her as she snaps her attention fully on Zuta. Her claws sunk deep into the wood now. Zuta held a steely gaze back up at her, only flickering with concern for his chieftain. Naja pauses briefly, her eyes twitch with unkept irritation as she tried to rein in her emotions. A shallow sigh pressed past her lips as she slumped back against a tree and stared back into the wasteland. I can't sleep a damn anyway. She massages her eyes meagerly with the tip of her digits, but holds them in place as she starts to growl. Every time I close them, Zuta. I see him. I see my boy. I see him and everyone else, frightened out of their minds, all because of that goddamn landslide. Her eyes are wrapped open, bloodshot and red. Her sorrows were swiftly dashed away with demented anger. It makes you think, doesn't it? Just how long do you think they had that trap set, huh? Only things missing was the bait. The anxiety she harbored in herself had reached its brink. In a fidget of rage, her leg stomps into the tree limb she was perched on. The wild force behind it caused the branch to snap beneath her feet. Damn, Naja be tough, bro. Naja hits the ground on all fours. Her face was ablaze with blistering fury. She grabs hold of the lengthy branch and chucks it far into the desert. Her body shook with an unyielding growl, spewing from her maw. She was shaking all over, Zuta realized. Ever since she was a youngling, Zuta helped her to kindle the rage and fear within her, to never let it fully consume her. It was a rare occasion to see her shaken up like this. With the loss of her own kin, she had all the right to be. He'd whisk out a heavy sigh and ventures close to the fuming lioness, his steely eyes held contently on her storming gaze. Naja, you sure you want to go through with this? Naja scoffs at the question. She shakes her head dismissively. What other choice is there, Zuta? Join the Empire, perhaps? Place our fate into more highborns who'll never know us but hate us all at the same time. There's no rhyme or reason to trust anyone outside of our own now. The sooner this is done, the better. Zuta nods sagely to her viewpoint, but wouldn't wave off the concept altogether. It often fancied the thought on numerous occasions, in fact.